Could TJ Finley really be Auburn's starting quarterback this season? Tank Bigsby seems to think so.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me on this Monday, Darrell, Dapprich, Montgomery radio vet, and joins us to talk Auburn basketball every single post-game show, which we will touch on in a moment as the Tigers are dancing in Birmingham. But first things first, Darrell, saw some comments from Tank Bigsby over the weekend. Former Auburn star running back, will be in the NFL in just a few weeks here. But in an interview that he had with Tom Green of AL.com, they talked about several different things, but eventually he praised Finley's ability to remain calm. He said, quote, "He's a very calm guy, in situations he never trips. All the adversity he's been through, he keeps going. He keeps fighting. He's looking for more, and I can relate to guys like that." And said that these were all reasons that maybe TJ Finley could win the starting quarterback job in 2023. Your thoughts?
There's some buzzwords in there that make it very, very obvious why Tank Bigsby is leaning this way. Let me give you 3 points as to why I think and what's important in his declaration. Number one, he's saying this assuming that no quarterback is going to come to Auburn after spring practice, which we still don't know if some things are going to play out that way in the transfer portal. So he's saying that right now based upon the current quarterbacks that are on the roster. That's very, very important. I think the whole dynamic changes on that if there's somebody else that comes. Number two, Tank Bigsby isn't Hugh Freeze or Phil Montgomery. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful to his opinion, but his opinion, for people that think that Tank Bigsby says this and declares this, that that's what it's going to be, it's not. With all due respect, it doesn't matter what Tank Bigsby thinks. He's not in practice. Right now, he's not a member of the Auburn football team, so he's not in spring practice. He's not watching the quarterbacks throw. He's not Hugh Freeze or Phil Montgomery. The third thing to me is I think he's making this statement because it's personal for him. When he says he stays calm, it's very obvious to me at what angle he's coming at with this. Tell me, go back to last season and tell me the most visible teammates you saw more than once getting into it on the sidelines. Who was it?
It was Robby and Tank.
Not once, not twice, 3 times, where they literally had to separate from each other. Where Robby's screaming at him, "Don't give up on me, don't give up on me." Where Tank Bigsby, Robby's acting, upset on the sidelines, not showing calm, not showing composure, showing a lot of emotion, and out of control a little bit, and Tank Bigsby and him are having words, and it was all precipitated by Robby pulling the read option out of Tank's gut and walking into the end zone. Bigsby didn't like that, but they had words more than once. It was heated. It was definitely emotional, and it wasn't calm. He wasn't very collected on the sidelines. Robby was pretty upset. That's where I think this whole genesis comes from with Tank Bigsby saying that about TJ Finley. In my opinion, just an opinion, it's a little bit of a throwing shade at Robby Ashford for the two's problems that they had on the sidelines during the course of this year.
That's right. That's certainly right. And so I just want to be clear, that's not part of Robby's game that I think needs to be fixed. I think my biggest concern with Robby is his accuracy with his arm. I like the passion. You need to control it to some extent, but I don't think John on the sideline with the teammates like the end of the world. I think context matters, but I don't think that it's like, oh, that's why Robby's not a good quarterback. I'm not. I don't think.
I'll make sure. I'm not saying that either. I'm not criticizing the kid for that emotion.
Sure.
I'm saying that's where Tank Bigsby is coming from, in my opinion, with his lifting up of TJ Finley. And to me, I think that's super ironic, and I'll just leave it at that.
I think the aspect of a player talking about it, because I think a narrative is like, oh, okay, well, TJ gave up on the team towards the end of last year. So that's why I was a little surprised to see it. But you brought up an angle that I really wasn't considering.
If you're asking me, my opinion, and yours is, I think, similar to this, if I'm a player, at the collegiate level? Do I want a teammate who kind of quits on me or refuses to go in, or do I want a teammate that's mad as crap and emotional because he cares so much on the sidelines? I'll take that second dude all day long.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm also a little surprised that he just gave an answer. Normally when you ask players, and I mean, I've interviewed, Auburn guys going through the draft process a ton of times and have asked them that question. And, or who's going to step up, and it's all generic, right? Everybody's always great. Everybody always is primed for a big year. And so I was a little surprised that he was so in the TJ camp.
I don't think it's so much in the TJ camp. See, that tells me he was so exactly. He was so eager to answer that question. I mean, that it was not so much pro TJ. In my opinion, it was anti Robby.
That's interesting. Do you think that dynamic at all impacts the quarterback position in regards to, the starting quarterback's going to need to get along with Jarquez Hunter?
Well, true, but maybe Jarquez Hunter doesn't have the same worldview about Robby Ashford that Tank Bigsby does. Maybe Jarquez Hunter
they certainly seem different.
Yeah, maybe Jarquez Hunter, what matters more to him is somebody refusing to go into a football game or basically quitting on his teammates. Maybe that is more important to Jarquez Hunter than – because it wasn't personal, because Jarquez Hunter never got into a scrimmage match on the sideline. I think that's what's clouding Tank Bigsby's view of this. Maybe the rest of the team is like, I'd rather go to war with somebody that's like that than just refuse to get into the line of battle with me.
I get it. Darrell Dapprich, our guest. All right, the Auburn Tigers are dancing, Darrell, and they're going 2 hours away up north to Birmingham to take on Iowa. And look, Darrell, I'm going to cut to the chase. I think this is a winnable game, and we'll touch on that in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends Darrell Dapprich at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. If you like delicious treats, they're all covered 100% in chocolate. Delicious, decadent chocolate. Very low in calories, very low in sugar, very high in protein. And look, Built Bar, they've got the Built March Madness bracket. It's here, and we all know that you have a favorite bar or puff, and now it's time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote on your favorites. It's going to be hard because they're all so delicious, but also head over to Built.com to check out all the different Built Bars and Built Puffs. Very, very good for you. And a great treat while we're all going to be watching a lot of college basketball in the coming weeks. Built Bar, thank you so much for being a partner with Locked On Auburn. Darrell Dapprich joining me on this Monday. The Tigers are dancing, taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. And look, we were watching this game, or the Selection Sunday show together, Darrell, as we were about to go live here on Locked On Auburn. And the 8 seed Iowa popped up, and I'm like, it's in Birmingham. And he's like, give me 9. I want the 9 seed. I want it. And then Auburn popped up. And I just think the fact that it's 2 hours away, Darrell, is so huge. It's so huge for Auburn. I think it's huge for this team that really feeds off of emotion. And I think it also kind of, the matchup, I think, is pretty close. And we'll talk on that in just a second, Darrell, because I think both of these teams are really, really similar. But anything that can give Auburn the edge in this 8-9 matchup, and by nature, the 8-9 matchup should be close. Those seeds are right next to each other for a reason. But, man, I've got a really good feeling about this game coming up on Thursday at 11 o'clock Central Time.
Well, Auburn got what they hoped for. 8, 9 are interchangeable. Whether you're 8 or 9 doesn't matter. It's just a uniform color that you wear. So being able to stay away from the 11. Now, some people think it's more advantageous to be a 10 seed. I'd much rather be a 9 seed in Birmingham than a 10 seed in Sacramento. I know you avoid the number 1 seed in the second round, but who cares? You have the opportunity to play in Birmingham. Yeah. You have the opportunity to have your fan base travel an hour and a half away to watch you and to give you a little of that home crowd advantage in Birmingham. Look, the Blue Bloods are usually the teams that get this. The Dukes, the North Carolinas, Gonzaga plays in Seattle in the first round, and, UCLA has played in San Diego, and Arizona's played in Las Vegas. I mean, that's even Duke's played in Charlotte, but to be able to play in Birmingham is a tremendous advantage and a tremendous break for Auburn. You're right down the road. Like I said, Auburn Nation can follow you. So a lot of the bracket matrix that I saw that run different scenarios, like 47 different scenarios, the one that it hit on the most was Auburn getting a 9 seed.
Right.
And the region that came up the most was Des Moines, Iowa, and tied with Birmingham, Alabama.
Right.
So it was pretty dead on accurate. And if you're an Auburn fan, you need to get up to Birmingham, support this basketball team. It's a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about just the gift that this team has been given. And, I mean, this is a team that a lot of national pundits said they'd be lucky to get into the tournament. Now, all of a sudden, they're sitting in the 9 seed. They are going to pretty much play a home game against Iowa, I bet. And we'll certainly see how the ticket situation unfolds in Birmingham. But this team shoots the ball really well, talking about Iowa. They score at a pretty efficient rate. They're third in adjusted offensive efficiency, according to KenPom, which means they score a lot of points over the course of 100 possessions, which is what KenPom really focuses on. But you look at it in their total score, Auburn is higher than them on KenPom. Auburn is higher on them than in the net. And I think, Darrell, we've said this before when we've done our post-game show here on Locked On Auburn. I think the way that this game's going to go is going to be more dependent on Auburn, unless Iowa just gets smoking hot, right? And they're shooting 50% from 3 or whatever. Then I don't think Auburn's really got much of a shot. But I think if this Auburn team could take care of the basketball, play smart basketball, don't make silly decisions, and just kind of live in the moment, they've got the talent to really hand it to Iowa. And we'll certainly see how that goes on Thursday.
It's a good matchup for Auburn based upon a couple of things. Number one, you know exactly what you have to do from a defensive matrix standpoint and metric standpoint. Iowa lives and dies with the 3. On the year, they average about 34%, but in the games that they've lost, they've been under 40%. The games they've won, they've been over 40%. So if you can extend defensively, get out in the shooting lanes and maintain or kind of contain Iowa under 40%, you have a good chance to win, because I like Auburn's advantage down low with the bigs. You cannot allow them to get hot and start to hit threes, because if you do, it's going to be a long day. Iowa lives and dies with the 3. So Auburn, from a defensive standpoint, knows what the challenge is. They know what they have to do. Now, on the flip side, Iowa gives up about 74 points a game, so they're not stellar defensively. They play in a league in the Big Ten that likes to muck it up a little bit and is really, I think from an athletic standpoint, focuses more on some of the teams in the Big Ten, had some, half-court offense, that kind of thing. It's not a transition league. So if Auburn can get out in transition, get some blocks, get some rebounds, they got to rebound the basketball. They cannot let Iowa beat them on the glass like some of these teams have with second-chance points. Arkansas killed Auburn with second-chance points. You can't allow that, because what Iowa will do, Zach, is they'll grab the rebound, and instead of trying to go back up and lay it up, they'll kick it back out behind the three-point arc and bury you that way. So you've got to get the rebound, try to get some transition baskets. If you can do that, if you're Auburn, it can limit them to one shot, can hold them under 40% from behind 3, and get some run-out baskets on your own, you have a very, very good chance to get out of the first round.
And I think that's exciting. And I think the fact also that it's in Birmingham is going to be huge. I think it's going to be huge. You mentioned in the live show you think that's worth 6 points. We will certainly see. And we'll talk about FanDuel's opening line in just a second. But obviously, if you beat Iowa, then you have to play a very good Houston team. And I've already seen some Auburn fans saying, oh, well, Houston, they're missing a few key guys. They're beatable. And it's like, well, stop. Houston's good. The Houston Cougars are a very, very good basketball team. They've got more than one just good more than just one good player. And so I certainly think that's an element that, maybe don't worry about Houston until after you beat Iowa, because Iowa's not a bad basketball team. But it's hard not to think about, one, the opportunity to upset a 1 seed, because that's going to be fun. But also the angle of, okay, well, you're playing Thursday morning. There's not a whole lot of people that are going to be able to get out and go, get out of work and go to that. There's going to be a limited group of Auburn people that are going to be able to do that. You open up to the weekend, Darrell. and just the amount of people that could flock to Birmingham to support the Tigers, I mean, that could be pretty electric.
It could, and that's why I think it's a very Houston, lost to Memphis in their conference title game. I get it. Memphis, really played well against Auburn in Atlanta on a neutral floor. So we've had some dealings with that conference, know all about that conference. I think Kelvin Sampson is a pretty good tournament coach when it comes to the postseason. He's a seasoned veteran. So look, if you're fortunate enough to get by Iowa, and which is a pretty evenly matched game, which it should be 8 versus 9, you give Auburn, in my opinion, a slight advantage, a slight bump, because they're playing what amounts to almost a home game, unless Iowa fans go out there and buy up all those tickets. I can't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Don't underestimate the Auburn-Alabama angle to this, that if Alabama bought up a lot of tickets knowing a week ago that they were pretty much locked into Birmingham.
Right.
And for the most part, there are some people, I know it's hard to believe, but you got Auburn and Alabama people that are good friends and know each other in business and that kind of stuff. Who's to say that the people that bought up the Alabama tickets won't say, hey, I've got a ticket for a session if you want to come to the game. You're my Auburn buddy. Who knows? I mean, there's people that are like that.
I kind of expected that to go the other way. Like Alabama people then just pulling for Iowa is actually how I thought you were about to.
Well, I'm just saying this. I know that I understand the rivalry and I get it, and the rivalry is heated, but a lot of corporations buy up these tickets, and a lot of people that were, buying them up in blocks thinking that Alabama was going to go might be willing to give some tickets to a really good customer or something like that to get Auburn fans in the building. You never know the dynamics of that. So, yeah, and the other thing too, they could give the tickets away because they want to go and pull for Iowa. Makes total sense. But I think that there's going to be a pretty strong Auburn showing, and I think that it's going to be like a home game, and people need to capitalize on that. And then if you're fortunate enough to get to the Houston matchup, Houston's going to be playing a game like on the road.
Darrell, the initial time that we saw that was listed on a couple of ticketing websites and on some sports books, it looks like the time was wrong. This will be a 5:50 tip on Thursday. 5:50 in the evening. TNT will broadcast the game. You'll have Jim Nance, Bill Rafferty, Grant Hill, and Tracy Wolfson. So solid crew there. In our post-game show there, we talked about the impact of playing at 11 o'clock. That's not the case. So they'll play Thursday evening, which is much better for viewership. People can get home from work and then watch the Tigers. So
and much better for people that may want to go to Birmingham to watch the game. I mean, if you're an Auburn fan and you want to work till 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock and then spool over, if you live in Birmingham, which a lot of people, there's a lot of Auburn people, that the Auburn Club and a lot of Auburn people in Birmingham, you get off work at 4 and go on over to the arena. That's a lot better and conducive for getting Auburn fans in the building.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, so we saw this note. Friend of the program, Justin Ferguson, tweeted this out. Said Auburn faced a school record 13 NCAA tournament teams this season, smashing the previous high of 10 in 2021. Also, the Tigers played 6 non-conference opponents that made it in: Memphis, West Virginia, Northwestern, USC, Colgate, and Texas Southern, breaking the previous program record of 4. And so it's kind of funny. We spent all this time talking about how weak Auburn's non-conference schedule was, and it ended up being okay.
I mean, that's pretty amazing to think you're playing 13 teams that are in the NCAA tournament. I remember early in the year when Clown Show Jeff Goodman, the national writer for basketball, was just taking all kind of heat because he wouldn't rank Auburn in his top 25. His mantra was, you're not going to play anybody that's in the tournament. What a joke that turned out to be, because that's Auburn's all-time high, 13 teams that are in the tournament. And, obviously we didn't break down what their record was against those teams in the tournament. I think it would be close to 500. I don't think it was very, very lopsided, because you had a couple of those early non-conference games that you won. And then like Mississippi State and Arkansas and those teams that you also beat in the regular season. So Tennessee, right? So yeah, it may be 6 and 7 or something like that, which isn't bad at all.
I mean, the fact that you've gotten to play in similar situations like this all season, I think is certainly helpful. We'll see. 2 of those losses are, you got 2 losses to Alabama, you got 2 losses to A&M, you split with Tennessee, and then you lose on the road to West Virginia and you lose in a neutral site to Memphis, and none of that's great, but there still were definitely silver linings in this season. And people don't want to acknowledge those, Darrell, but we're about to. There's a lot to be excited about where Auburn basketball is currently. So many people have labeled this season as like not successful. Get out of here with all that crap. We'll talk about that in a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Darrell, the opening line for FanDuel, Auburn, Iowa in the tournament, is Iowa favored by 0.5 point. So it's a pick 'em. It's a pick 'em.
Which is good for an 8-9 matchup. Makes sense, right? Yeah.
And I'm curious to see. I bet that line moves one way or the other. We'll certainly see which way it does. Just kind of based on Auburn's history, wouldn't be shocked if it moved in favor of Iowa, just because that's kind of the way Auburn's always viewed in this. And I get it, but I think there's a lot of issues with Iowa, much like there's a lot of issues with this Auburn team. We'll touch on that in a second. But yeah, be sure to check out our friends at FanDuel.com/lockedon. College basketball, it's the time to make sure you're ready. Go ahead and head over to FanDuel and get your deposit in, and so you're ready to just kind of pull out some of these bets, because it's going to be a lot of fun. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Yeah, Darrell, I think the whole narrative of like this season not being successful is ridiculous. I mean, you're a 9 seed when so many people thought there were a lot of national pundits that seemed a little upset that Auburn was a 9 seed. And just put yourself in the perspective of everyone's labeling this as a down year for Auburn basketball, and you're a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Historically, Auburn's done well out of that spot too. The 9 seed, the 10 seed, they've gone out west a couple times with an 11 seed, that kind of thing, and done well. So this is a position that Auburn should thrive in. At this point in the season, you get into the NCAA tournament comfortably. There's no play-in. You weren't an 11 seed or a 10 seed where it was close. I think Auburn's their fate was sealed when they beat Tennessee. Now, could they have moved their seed line up 1 or 2 had they made a run in the SEC tournament? Maybe. History says that they typically it doesn't dictate that. So I think Auburn's a solid 9. The fact that they get to play in Birmingham. Look, if you'd have told me at the beginning of the year that Auburn was going to win 20, 21 games, they were going to end up being in Birmingham as an 8 or a 9 seed, I would have taken that. Now, I would have prefaced that by saying I didn't think coming out of the Israel tour, I thought Auburn their ceiling would have been a little bit higher than that. But if you'd have told me Chance Westry and Johan Trehor would not have panned out in this particular year and not played particularly well, then yeah, I would have said, I'll take that. And so that's where we are. And now it's time for guys like Katie Johnson and Wendell Green and Alan Flanagan and some of these guys, Jalen Williams, that are seasoned experience to thrive come tournament time.
I'm with you. It's their chance, right? And we've seen this team respond when their backs were against the wall. I think you could argue that their backs were probably against the wall against Arkansas in the SEC tournament. And, we saw how they responded in the first half. It wasn't great. But for the most part, like Missouri, I mean, that's one of their better games that they've played all year. And then the season
Tennessee
finale
game
against Tennessee, right? And both those situations, those were labeled as must wins, right? And obviously this is a must win situation, because all of a sudden, now that we assume you'll pretty much have home court advantage when it comes to fans and attendance on Thursday, you've got a chance. Like, if you win, nobody can say this is a failure of a year. You just can't do it. I mean, Auburn doesn't have a whole lot of NCAA tournament wins in their history. And the fact that you can add to that on a 20-win season, like, you take it. And so I'm not going to say like there's a lot at stake here, but as far as, there's a lot of dudes on this roster that were a big part of the ascension of this program. And I'd love to see him go out with a tournament win and then a chance to beat Houston. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun. And, maybe Auburn catches heat at the right time. We'll certainly see. Maybe Houston has those injuries kind of pile up and they can't catch up. I mean, we'll see. We'll certainly see. I mean, 1 seeds lose in the second round of the tournament all the time. Who's to say Auburn can't contribute to that? So I love this draw, Darrell. I can't imagine it could have been much better than what we got.
I think your point that if you just win one game in the tournament, you can't deem it as a not a successful season. I agree 100%. Number one, that means you're getting to the weekend of the NCAA tournament, and then nobody is going to begrudge you or consider you a failure if you get bounced by the number one seed, right? I mean, it'd be different if you were a 3 seed and you go out and win your first game, and then you play the 10 seed, game 2, and you get beat. Then it's a failure. But if you win, you win on Thursday and advance to Saturday and end up getting bounced from Houston, who's a number 1 seed. Who can begrudge that? You lost to the number 1 seed, to a number 1 seed.
Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on, brother?
DAP6410 on Twitter on Monday mornings at 7:10 a.m. I'm with Ben Taylor on Auburn Opelika this morning at about 1:35. I'm with Doug Amos on the Max Roundtable, and then I'm with you after every basketball game, and we'll see how far we can get this extended.
Yep. Hopefully we have several more shows together talking about this basketball team, but we will definitely have one this Thursday after they take care of business, hopefully against Iowa. Even if they don't, we'll still recap the season together whenever the season does come to an end. You can find all my written work at auburndaily.com, and we'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.